Quote, "You're awake right now, you're not dead, and you haven't gone to hell," unquote, said Rachel Maddow, former host on CNN following the 2016 election. Ladies and gentlemen, people are angry about politics. Donald Trump had similar words following the 2020 election. Quote, "You're not going to have a country anymore," unquote. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel cried on stage following the 2024 election. Quote, "It was a terrible night for women and children, for poor people, for minorities, for the middle class, for democracy and decency," unquote. Here, Jimmy Kimmel, Rachel Maddow, and Donald Trump make sensational claims. But they didn't make these claims to solve a problem. Instead, they wanted to create drama, and they achieved it by displaying shock and anger to the cameras. This is called a false outrage. Even though false outrage is designed for the cameras, it influences others. Actually, it doesn't just influence them, it infects them. False outrage is a disease. To cure this disease, we must decide that anger is not the solution to problems. Today, we'll start by diagnosing our culture with false outrage. Second, we'll move on to its symptoms. And then we'll conclude with the cure. If American culture could walk into a doctor's office, it would come away with a severe diagnosis of false outrage. What's the difference between real and false outrage? Real outrage wants what is right. It only cares about achieving good. False outrage wants to be seen. In George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984, the communist regime mandates a daily practice known as the 2 minutes of hate. Every single day, the citizens of the regime gather in front of their TVs and scream in pure outrage as images of their capitalist oppressors are shown. This is an excellent example of a false outrage. Because citizens were only performing their outrage. False outrage is all over the internet today. You could say the online world has as much self-control as a nuclear explosion. For example, a study in Science magazine by Killian McLaughlin and her colleagues found that, quote, social media posts that express outrage are liked and shared more, training users to express outrage and ranking algorithms to amplify it, unquote. For example, Benny Johnson, a conservative podcaster, uses false outrage to attract views. One of his recent videos featured an AI-generated thumbnail of California Governor Gavin Newsom angrily holding a burning dollar bill in front of the Hollywood sign, which was also burning. In another, Donald Trump in Eskimo clothing screams along with Vladimir Putin. This doesn't make any sense. But Benny Johnson has 15 million followers. Unfortunately, false outrage doesn't stay online. Humans copy the behaviors and worldviews of those around them. And because online outrage consumes so much of our time, that changes our actions in the real world. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, a free speech organization, points this out in a report. Quote, this year more than 2/3 of students, 68%, said that shouting down a speaker is at least rarely acceptable. Unquote. This report noted that these numbers are now at record highs. Students are now more willing than ever to use outrage to end conversations. This happens all around us. 3 years ago, my grandparents and I went to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. When the march ended, I decided to keep my poster as a souvenir. A woman saw me carrying my poster and started screaming at me. She believed yelling at 14-year-olds makes you a good person. Now that we've diagnosed our culture with false outrage, let's talk about the symptoms. What are those? Well, false outrage causes us to have angry conversations and to believe that our anger makes us good people. As writers for The Minimalist, a blog that encourages simple living, put it, quote, we've all gotten offended without asking ourselves why, and then used our fake outrage to cast judgment upon others. It helps us feel better. Unquote. When we pretend to be outraged, we don't have to reason through our beliefs. Piers Morgan, the British host of a political show with 4 million followers, uses false outrage to avoid hard questions. In 2017, when a guest on his show questioned his stance on gun policy, Piers responded, quote, how dare you? His face tightening for the camera. When his guest responded, quote, well, Piers, you can keep saying that, but my point still stands. Piers did not address the point. Quote, again, how dare you? Unquote, he repeated. Nothing Piers Morgan said advanced the debate. Instead, he used outrage to shield himself, because outrage is easier than analysis. False outrage is like hiding under the bed in hide and seek. It'll hide you well, but it's a terrible place to be. Performative anger is a terrible place to be. I saw this as I sat in the audience at a committee hearing in the US House of Representatives, as several experts explained developments in nuclear technology. Most of the Congresspeople did what you'd expect, politely ask questions. But one Congresswoman decided to yell at the experts. She was angry about nuclear contamination in her district. Quote, let me finish my sentence, unquote. She demanded, saying 10 more sentences as the committee chairman banged on the table with his gavel, telling her she was out of order. Eventually, she stormed out of the room. Because of her anger, she missed an opportunity to learn about nuclear power. But she wasn't angry for no reason. She believed she was doing a good work by standing against nuclear power. So that's another symptom. We express outrage because it makes us feel like good people. Psychologist Joshua Grubbs, in a 2019 study, found that public figures express outrage so that their audience applauds them, in what he calls moral grandstanding. When public figures condemn some far off event, they receive praise for their bravery and courage. Stephen Colbert, another late night host, has done exactly that. After Donald Trump held a rally at Madison Square Garden in New York City, Colbert said on his show, quote, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but in 1939 they held a pro-Nazi rally there, unquote. With this remark, Colbert insinuated that Trump is Nazi adjacent. Having created a straw man out of Trump, an evil Nazi, Stephen Colbert spared no words, swearing at Trump live on national television. His statements make sense because his worldview treats outrage as virtuous. Author Glenn Beck describes the human effect of false outrage in his book, Addicted to Outrage. Quote, it deprives human beings of genuine humanity, replacing it instead with an outwardly facing caricature of a virtuous human being wrapped around a rotting corpse. Unquote. This twisted worldview has morality backwards. False outrage replaces good deeds with outraged words. The culture celebrates false outrage. Politicians and media figures promote it. They don't deserve all the blame. Their worldview deserves the blame. Their worldview is false. Fake outrage is not a virtue, and moral grandstanding is not a good. This moral confusion has corrupted the morality of millions and transformed it into outrage. But I wouldn't have accomplished anything if I told you to be outraged at false outrage. That would be a terrible cure to the sickness. I used to be addicted to outrage. I was angry at every news story. I debated every little detail. Thankfully, I was convicted after reading Glenn Beck's book, Addicted to Outrage. I realized what I had been doing. Colossians 3 verse 2 says, quote, "Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things." I made a pledge to stop being outraged at earthly things. Imagine if everyone stopped practicing false outrage. If everyone stopped being so angry. If we calmly discussed difficult questions and stopped believing our outrage makes us good people. That's the world I want to live in. And that world is only possible if you help build it. To take a quote from Darth Vader in Star Wars, completely out of context. Quote, "With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy." Unquote. You won't improve the world by being angry. You'll make the world a better place if you have calm discussions, actually do good deeds, and focus on something higher than the next controversy. False outrage isn't worth it. Life is too beautiful to waste being angry.